The 1995-96 academic year is now well underway, and welcome to the October 1995 episode of Spotlight on UNBC. Coming up on this program, we'll visit with some Siberian First Nations people who visited UNBC over the summer. We'll hear from many of the donors who have helped to make the UNBC North to the Future Scholarship and Bursary campaign a big success. And we'll get reflections on the short term of UNBC Interim President George Peterson. But coming up next, we'll visit a lake a few miles east of Prince George for a hands-on look at how research can make a difference in our own backyard. Those stories and many more are coming up on this episode of Spotlight on UNBC.
Men and women from throughout this region believed in the idea of a University of the North. They worked hard and they succeeded.
I can easily predict that these will be seen as the golden years of this university.
You and I have been involved in a process that was a once-in-a-lifetime thing.
You can value education and go elsewhere and get the same information. But if you value what you get out of it as a person and your input into it, then UNBC is an awesome experience.
I take pride in opening the university, and I wish you all, in whatever capacity you serve the cause of learning, a bright and successful future.
Research is a big part of what happens at a university, but it often has a negative connotation. The truth is, research is vital to improving our quality of life and the quality of the world in which we live. A few miles east of Prince George is a lake called Tabor Lake, which was the scene of a large fish kill a few years back. Why did it happen? And what can be done to prevent it from happening again? Research now underway may open the door to providing the answers to those questions. 2 years ago, nearly 100,000 whitefish died in Tabor Lake. It was of great concern to residents of the area and was front-page news in Prince George.
We had a task force that worked for 9 months to figure out where the problems were in terms of the lake quality. Why were the fish dying? And because we didn't have the sampling occurring, the ministry wasn't doing the regular monitoring the summer of '93 when the fish kill actually occurred, we couldn't say for certain, but it appeared that there was an excess amount of nutrients in the lake. And the nutrient of concern was phosphorus, which is a nutrient that we put on, our fertilized fields, we add to our plants in the house. So it's a nutrient that's required for plants, and there's an excess amount of it in the lake water column and also in different parts of the lake. And so we wanted to figure out where was it located and where could we actually manage it. And if we could manage the phosphorus, could we then reduce the other problems that were occurring, like these massive amounts of plant growth, the loss of oxygen in the water column, which then can result in the die-off of fish.
The lake is phosphorus rich with a vast reservoir of phosphorus at the bottom of the lake. As oxygen levels in the lake drop, that phosphorus is released into the water column. But research underway over the summer looked at other sources.
What I'm looking at is another mechanism for this phosphorus loading, which is the aquatic weeds that as they grow, they take the nutrient phosphorus from the sediments and take it up to their plant tissue. And in the fall or late summer, as they start to die off, they leach out the phosphorus into the water column. And so I'm looking at quantifying how much the weeds, or what role the weeds play and how much phosphorus they contribute to the overall lake productivity. But what I have set up here is an echo sounder, and what it does is it's hooked up to a little device at the back of the boat, and it sends out a sound frequency that bounces off the bottom and then comes back to the bottom of the transducer, and this registers what the bottom of the lake looks like. Okay, the chart recorder gives you a signal of the bottom, which is right here, and it also registers what sort of aquatic weeds are present, and you can see the aquatic weeds growing here. Now what I'm using this for is to quantify the aquatic vegetation in Tabor Lake. And by using this in conjunction with regular sampling, you see there are buoys at specific locations around the lake. And I'll go down and I'll actually sample with scuba gear the quantity of weeds that are there. And I'll use the quantity of weeds to calibrate what each marking on the chart recorder is. And from the chart recorder and the calibrations, I'll be able to quantify the amount of weeds in the lake.
Efforts have already been underway to reduce the amount of weeds in Tabor Lake. A weed harvester takes out about 80 tons of algae every day.
There were some definite means that we could alleviate some of the problems, and the harvester was actually brought in the summer of '94, and then again this summer to take out some of the weeds, which is both an aesthetic. We do it for aesthetic purposes because people don't like the weeds in the near shore, and at the same time we're also removing the nutrients that are inside the biomass or inside the plants themselves. So we take that out of the watershed and get rid of that amount of phosphorus. One of the things that we decided from doing some sediment surveys or sampling the mud on the bottom of the lake was that a lot of the concentration, a lot of the phosphorus that has come into the lake over the years which could have come from the fire that occurred on the Tabor Mountain in, I think, 1961, and the phosphorus which is coming from residential development, which has occurred through the years, phosphorus which is coming from airborne particulates, and phosphorus which could be coming in from groundwater. There's all these different sources. Which one of these can we actually manage, and in order to reduce the amount in the water? We can carve out a piece of the problem and have that addressed very directly by a graduate student who usually has a full summer of field work where they can go in and do the sampling, collect data, and then address a very specific part of the problem, which is what Sean is doing in terms of addressing the role of the weeds in the phosphorus budget. We know that the sediments are a large component, and we found that out last year by doing some sediment sampling, and but we don't know what the relative contribution of the amount of weeds in this lake are. So he's cutting out that part of the pie and addressing that.
If we remove the phosphorus, we remove how productive the lake is, we reduce the amount of algae that grows, we remove the amount of reduce the amount of plant growth that happens. And so if you can reduce the phosphorus concentration, then you can reduce all this productivity. Now the link between the fish kill and the algae and the weeds is that, so the theory goes, no one knows for sure because no one was sampling at the time, but the theory goes that as the weeds around the lake started to die, normally they produce oxygen, but as they started to die, oxygen was consumed through the decomposition process, and this affected the species of fish which lived in the weed beds because all the oxygen was used up and therefore they were oxygen starved. So if you can reduce the amount of phosphorus, you will reduce the amount of weed growth, which will reduce the likelihood of fish kill from zero or low oxygen concentrations.
Despite the story which you've just seen, geography is more than just examining the physical world. There is also an important cultural component. Over the summer, a half-dozen Siberian First Nations people visited northern BC to learn from First Nations people here. Although there's no physical contact between Native peoples in Russia and northern BC, remarkable similarities were discovered, due in large part to the similarities in geography.
They were very interested in the issue of co-management, of actually having some kind of say in the management of resources, and specifically we looked at parks, and that was a very interesting thing. There was quite a bit of interest in not only the common histories they shared, but some of the ways that they diverged and what the First Nations from this continent might learn from Soviet experience. And we had looked at it more in terms of what the Siberians would learn, but there was some interest there. And then there was just the joyful moments of a Siberian woman and a Tache woman on top of a moose skin, skinning together and talking about comparative techniques of how you tan a moose hide. So there were those wonderful moments like that.
Besides being the main organizer for the visit, which was funded by the MacArthur Foundation in Chicago, Gail Fondal also served as translator. But even though there was a language barrier, there were many cultural similarities.
The economic activities are also very similar: hunting, fishing, and all of these economic activities in both places are connected with nature.
И, естественно, все-таки вот эти все обряды, все связано именно с природой, и что у нас там природа, вероисповедание у них на природе, что у них тут.
And customs and rituals are also connected with nature, and we, as here, we've all lived in concert and dependent on nature.
The group had a chance to witness that connection with nature firsthand. There were many eventful stops, including one in the Morristown Canyon and another in the Nass Valley.
To our friends from Russia, to our distant relatives, we welcome you into our traditional territory. And we certainly hope that whatever it is that you experience within our traditional territory, what you see, you can bring back and relate to your people, what the Aboriginal people are doing here in Canada. And I'm sure, and no doubt, you will visit other Aboriginal groups in this great land of ours. And we want to pass on words of encouragement to you, bearing in mind the political situation that now exists within your country. We want to pass on words of encouragement to you to maintain who you are as an individual, as a group of people, to maintain your language, to maintain your culture, and to pass those on to those that will be coming after you.
Мы ничего не продвинемся в настоящее время.
Maybe it's because the youth don't think that we're really getting anywhere with our attempts to revitalize culture and language and all that, and they don't really see any use for this.
И я думаю, что вот все то, что я записала, то, что нам рассказывали, встречаясь мы с людьми, покажу я все эти книги о жизни индейцев и расскажу, вдохновит нас. Я надеюсь, что мы тоже, как коренные народы, населяющие Британскую Колумбию, наверное, сделаем какой-то шаг вперед. Хотя у нас и сейчас, в нашей стране, это очень трудно, когда нет поддержки.
And I think that everything I wrote down during the trip, and the papers I received, and the books and pictures that I received, these will help me convince the youth that we are going somewhere and we're doing something, and we can go somewhere, and we, like the First Nations of British Columbia, we can move ahead, though it's very hard in our situation, in the economic situation right now. The more the university can do to reach out to the community and make these events possible, and often through funding agencies which only are available to the academic community or to certain sectors of the community, we have the ability to bring in people from other areas of the world. We might as well use that to foster such kinds of exchanges that do open up the eyes of the whole community.
UNBC has a new president this month, and an official installation ceremony will be held on October 19th at the Prince George Civic Center. The formal event will begin at 2 p.m. and will be followed by a variety of campus events later that evening. This will be only UNBC's second installation ceremony. The first was held in May 1992, when founding President Jeffrey Weller and Chancellor Iona Campagnolo were officially installed. For July, August, and September, an interim president held UNBC's top office. George Peterson came to UNBC for a 3-month term following his retirement as president of the University of Western Ontario.
Dr. Jagos indicated his interest in going through a fairly detailed, demanding in terms of time, planning exercise in which the views, advice, opinions from a whole variety of different interested players will be sought. And that's going to have a lot to do with the future direction of this institution. All I can give you is my perception of what I think ought to happen here. I think those perceptions square fairly well with Chuck Jagos. I think, first of all, the university, if it's going to be defined as a success, will have to satisfy its reason for establishment. That is, it's a regional university. And so you have out there some pretty high expectations in Chetwynd and Quesnel and Terrace and Prince Rupert and all the smaller communities. And that will have to be done and done well, because, as I said, the level of expectation is pretty high. So that's one thing. I think that in order for UNBC to be successful, it should be looking to ways in which it can coordinate and articulate its activities with the 3 community colleges and with the 17 or 18 school districts that are in the area that is typically defined as UNBC's territory.
George Peterson's retirement is proving to be as eventful as his pre-retirement years. He's now serving a 1-year term as president of Royal Roads University, his 4th presidency at a BC university.
I like to walk around a university when I work in one, and I've spent some of my time the last week talking to students. Very positive. They like it here, as they should. Lovely surroundings, good instruction, wonderful faculty to student ratio. I don't know what it is this year. Last year was 5 to 1 as compared to a national average of about 20 to 1. So that's very positive. No, I think it's terrific. Starting to address the question of regional delivery. How do we get services out to smaller communities in this area?
Not only is the Prince George campus one of the most attractive university campuses in the country, it's also power smart. BC Hydro presented UNBC with a $165,000 check for the university's initiative in installing energy-efficient fixtures.
I think it's very important for 2 reasons, Rob, both for the university and for the province. First of all, it saves the university by being power smart. We will save approximately $97,000 this year in our heating and lighting costs. That could look after the lighting and heating demands of 188 houses in Prince George, which in turn helps the province because it means that power then can go towards another project. It also means that in initiatives like this, BC Hydro they do not have to build another dam. They can use the existing resources they have and spread them around more. What's really been helpful to us is the fact that we started from ground zero. We've got a university that's been able to build and plan its total phase of expansion, which eventually could be the size that Simon Fraser is. The expansion has been designed from a master plan that takes us from a new design right through to, like I say, a finished campus 25 years from now, and it's all based around a core mechanical system that can be expanded upon coming from one power source.
Even though this academic year has just begun, some UNBC departments are already looking ahead to September 1996. The Registrar's Office, for example, has already been visiting high schools in the province, giving grade 12 students a taste of the programs and services available at BC's Northern University.
Basically, yeah, it's to inform them, and we want the people that will fit best for our university. I mean, each university has its sort of niche and the students that fit there best, and I think we have that as well.
And I think the fact, too, that both Jennifer and I are from the north as well. I mean, we already know what it's like to live up here in Prince George, and we're not coming in from elsewhere saying, well, I haven't wintered there yet, but I hear that it's great, and it's different to have that perspective. And I think that since both of us are from Prince Georgian area, I know what it's like to come from a small town and go to university. I've, went from Vanderhoof to Vancouver, so I know what that displacement can feel like. And, and I think that's important to identify with other students. We both have had the big city experience, and we both had Prince George experience, and that's something to draw upon, I think.
Students looking to attend any university are drawn by scholarships and bursaries. UNBC's North to the Future campaign has as its primary goal the establishment of a large scholarship and bursary program, and about $8 million has been raised so far. But the program is about more than just raising money. It's about building partnerships with corporations, individuals, and communities.
We are trying to determine locally in Prince Rupert which needs the different groups have, so that we could tie that up with the university.
We've started to make inquiry to see if we as a city could actually put the buildings in place and work out arrangements for leases and things like that. That is the commitment that we as Prince Rupert are making to this university.
The beacon on the hill and the symbol of the university has to change the attitude of many people toward post-secondary education in British Columbia and in Prince George. I know that historically we've had a very low participation rate, and one of the reasons I got involved with the university was to promote and help post-secondary education.
So what we have to do here on what I call the frontier of education is kind of educate the community as to what a university can offer.
We've taken a rather different approach in our fundraising from other universities. We haven't just sort of asked for the money, said thank you when it's come and gone away. We have suggested to all of the major donors that they link with us on an ongoing basis. And if they're supporting a particular program area or some other direction, that they in fact partner with us and offer us advice and counsel in the development of that area.
Certainly contributing through education, through scholarship, is a pretty significant way to affect the area in which you live. That's why UNBC has been the recipient of some very, very generous thinking on behalf of business throughout the North.
The University of Northern British Columbia is already bringing in hundreds of thousands of dollars of research money into this region that will be applied to the study of the problems of this region. People underestimate the significance of research as a major part of the process of transforming and expanding a region's economic and social and cultural base.
For instance, for the oil and gas, it's about putting back for a community of which you are very much an integral part. And the same goes true for BC Hydro and the forestry industries as well, the coal mine industries, because they are part of the community. They're helping to support an institution that will educate their children, their children's children, and make this a more dynamic, well-rounded place to live.
We're anxious to be more involved, and I think as the university develops, they will look to support from businesses around here on an ongoing basis.
Industry's been extremely supportive all around, not just in terms of very generous donations to help, but just in their general encouragement.
We've had a lot of experience with recruiting people from outside the province and from other areas, and we firmly believe that if people train in the area, they will live in the area.
We need more and more professionally trained people than ever before, and the chance of a post-secondary institution such as UNBC developing local people to come back and fill these long-term high-tech requirements is something that we definitely need, and we're looking forward to utilizing.
It's a wonderful opportunity for our employees to continue their education and development and help them grow and grow northward. It's going to be a great opportunity for us to recruit people that are interested in living in the north.
And so the time has come for those corporations to put some of their profits back into the north. And I'm delighted to see, like Northwood, for instance, and Canfor, who have made major contributions to the future of this university, and there will be others, all of whom I am quite sure will in time become numbered amongst our benefactors.
We were very honored that they gave us a chance to name a facility after us. It's going to be called the Canfor Theatre.
UNBC has a tremendous amount of work left to do. We still need a tremendous amount of support in the area of research infrastructure. Our library needs to be expanded and needs to be provided with a foundation that will ensure it can grow and flourish in years to come.
Building the library is an interesting challenge because it's incredibly expensive. Acquiring corporate and private support is therefore even more important. The national university magazine, University Affairs, points out some of the new realities. For example, the cost of subscriptions to academic journals has increased 1,200% in the past 30 years.
Librarians have been looking at the issue of research journals, because if the University of Alberta holds a journal and is the only library in Western Canada who holds a particular scientific journal, and because of cuts to its budgets has to cut that journal, the question is, what does that do to us in Western Canada in terms of access? And so there are ongoing discussions without yet any resolution to how you might in fact have a regional resource and ensure that a certain core of journals is available within the region, but not necessarily owned by every library or even 2 or 3 of them.
So collaboration among libraries will be the key, and as cooperation develops, the notion of the virtual library gains credibility. Libraries have always housed a universe of knowledge. They will continue to organize that knowledge, but in the future, libraries may simply provide access to it without necessarily housing it.
With the technology, you can access something from a library from a guild or something that has a huge amount of information or research that you probably wouldn't be able to access here. The only problem with that is that the time it would actually take to access it. I mean, it's easier just to go in the library and pull out a book off the shelf, and especially, I mean, like when you're a university student, you don't have a limited amount of time. You have deadlines to meet, and so, I mean, it does help to a point. But you do sometimes need the immediate resource right there.
We're in a transition stage, a very significant transition stage, in my view, in how libraries and researchers and the general public access information. The whole realm of information services and information systems is changing almost every day. We still haven't been through that. We don't know what the end result will be. We all reach out to use what part of the system and the technology is most utilitarian for us at any particular time. But it's still in a transition stage.
Thanks for tuning in to the October 1995 episode of Spotlight on UNBC. Next month, watch for highlights from the installation of new UNBC President Charles Jago, and we'll go to the Nass Valley and do a story on an innovative new First Nation Studies program. My name is Rob Van Addercombe, and I'll see you again next month.